Let's talk about the 5-minute speak up debrief ritual so that you can build your courage, but also improve the quality of your speaking up moment so that no speaking up moment goes to waste. The more you do this ritual, the faster you'll be better at it in terms of the results that you'll get when you speak up. You'll be more courageous as well. But you have to take some time to debrief. And I know at times it's really scary to stop and think about something that's already scary on its own. But to think about, to debrief, even if to ourselves, to mentally go back and review a very scary moment where we think we underperformed is not something that most of us are comfortable with. However, we have to do it. Otherwise, we put that speaking up moment to waste. The intention of this ritual is to elevate that moment, record that moment, and most of all, reflect on that moment. Understand what worked, what didn't work, and what you can do better. This is like public speaking. For those of you who've done Toastmasters, I've done Toastmasters. Once a month, I would do a talk, a speech, and I would actually record it so I could review it, even though I hated seeing myself. But I could then reflect on it. I could do this ritual of reviewing, what did I do well? What could I do better? That's how you're going to accelerate your learning and your comfort level with this. But it's also going to help you understand how much speaking up you do. Because when you start to log it, you're going to realize how often you speak up and in what kind of situations you speak up with, what kind of people. You're going to start to have data points. And when you have data points, then you can really start to understand your behaviors, what things you avoid, what your comfort level is, and you can start seeing your progress. You can start seeing, you know what? I spoke up once last week, but then the other week I spoke up twice, and then I spoke up 5 times, and then I spoke up 10 times. And each time you're going to feel more empowered, more courageous, braver, and you're going to be doing so with more technique. It's also going to help you not quit too easily on whatever the reason you're speaking up. If it was to request a promotion, hey, you're not going to give up after one attempt because you realize it wasn't perfect and you got to go back and try again. If you are advocating for an idea, a project, a resource, you're going to log it in, you're going to look at it, you're going to say, oh my gosh, that wasn't great. Let's do this again. And this is what you do when you have a coach. I got myself a coach when it comes to sales because I'm not good at it. We avoid things that we're not good at. So if you're not good at speaking up, you're going to avoid it. But this is a way to really force yourself to evaluate what you're doing. That's what I'm doing with a coach. I'm evaluating myself every week. What did I do? What did I not do? How much progress did I make? And how can I improve on what I'm doing? What's working, what's not working? And how can I improve what I'm saying to make my efforts more effective? That's what you need to do. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to start realizing that a lot of things are not optimized in terms of how you're doing things. So I want to go through this process with you. It's called the 5-minute speak up debrief ritual. What this means is every time you speak up about anything, you disagree with someone openly, you make a request, you ask for an opportunity, for a resource, for mentorship, for someone's time, or you express a concern, you share an idea in a meeting and you speak up, you assert your boundaries, you set your expectations, you hold people accountable, you give constructive criticism, you praise someone. All of those are forms of speaking up. So when you speak up, when you are in a moment where you spoke up, especially if it's something outside of your comfort zone, especially because I want to encourage you to speak up outside of your comfort zone, then I want you to take 5 minutes to debrief that moment within that day. Don't wait until the end of the week, because otherwise you're going to forget the interaction. You're going to forget what happened. You're going to forget what you said. I want you to log in immediately, have a journal, have something that you can write on, and take note of these elements. I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to write on this journal, on this speak up debrief ritual. I want this to become a reflection ritual for you so that you can start to appreciate the moments where you speak up and not let it pass in vain. Elevate it, analyze it, learn from it, reflect on it, celebrate it. We want to increase your personal awareness. We want to help you speak up better by really having a growth mindset towards it, and also sort out those emotions, because speaking up for a lot of people is a very emotional terrain. And so I want to help you sort through those emotions and transform any negative emotions of fear, confusion, all of those things into positive emotions. And that's what this debrief ritual is designed to do. There are 3 elements in the 5-minute speak up debrief ritual. 3 prompts that are going to help you structure, reflect on your speaking up moment. The first one is the situation. The second one is your mindset. And the third one is what you learned from it. That's the growth mindset piece. So situation is basically what happened. The mindset is, are your thought process around it? Because sometimes we speak up and we don't have a thought process. I want you to train yourself in being more intentional about how you go about speaking up. And that's what this mindset piece is going to do for you. And then the learnings is reflecting on what went well, what didn't, how can you improve? So let's break these 3 parts. The situation, very simple. Date, write down the date. When did this conversation happen? 5th of July of 2024. Great. Person, whom did you speak to? Or maybe this is you attempt to speak up, but you didn't actually speak up. Even if it's an attempt to speak up and you were too scared, write it down, put it in your journal. I attempted to speak to this person, or I did speak up to my manager, my coworker, my team member, my peer, my spouse. And third, log in the person's response. What did they say when you spoke up? How did they respond? How did they react? Did they say something? Did they like it? Did they disapprove of it? Did they ignore you? Did they listen to you? Did they give you other ideas? What happened? What was their response? So you start to understand what you did and the response that people had. Because most of our fear comes from people's response. We think that the response is going to be a catastrophe. That's going to be a really bad outcome. So I want you to start logging what the real response is, because you'll forget if you don't log it. The second piece is now the mindset. Now you're going to start thinking about the mindset behind that speaking up moment. And the first element of mindset is to write down the goal. What was the goal? What were you trying to achieve by speaking up or planning to speak up, even if you didn't speak up? What was your intention? What was your purpose? What was the goal? And it's important to have a goal when you speak up. Well, the intention of this segment is to train you to think about, why am I doing this? I'm not doing this to vent off my frustrations. I'm not doing this to hurt people. I'm doing this because there's some objective I want to achieve. There's something I want to achieve for myself, for others, for my clients, for the company, for the team. What am I trying to achieve? For the relationship? What's your motivation? And when we elevate our motivation, which is our goal, then guess what happens? Our courage goes up to be able to speak up. So this helps you also develop that courage. The second part of mindset is the fear element. What were some of the fears that made it difficult for you to speak up? Maybe held you back from speaking up, made it scary or uncomfortable. What are the fears and beliefs that halted your process of speaking up? And then I want you to think about, what did you expect people were going to do? What did you expect was going to be the result of you speaking up? What was the worst case scenario that was running through your mind? Get fired? Be ostracized? Nobody's going to like you. They're going to say, I hate you. I'm never going to talk to you again. You're such a bad person. What's the worst case scenario that was running through your head? And what's the best case scenario? I want you to write that down, right? For that speaking up moment, what was the worst case scenario? What was the best case scenario? And why were you scared? What was it? Was it fear of retaliation, fear of backlash, or you felt like nobody was going to do anything about it? That you're going to be seen as aggressive and difficult? What was the reason? What was the real fear? And then third, I want you to think about emotions. The third category are emotions. What emotions did you experience right before speaking up or building towards that? Maybe you didn't sleep at night because you were so worried about having to speak up. What were those emotions going through beforehand? What were the emotions as soon as you started to speak up? Like as soon as you started to speak up and you were in the moment of actually saying something, what did you feel? And immediately after speaking up and after the response that people had, how did you feel? Now, sometimes you might feel incredible anxiety beforehand for hours, for days, for months even. I felt anxiety for months if I had an important conversation with my manager. Often when you're during, a lot of those fears might come down because you're focused in communicating. And then after, you might actually feel proud, excited, or disappointed. Write it down so that you have data points to start to understand what this is, because a lot of those fears that we have are very irrational. Often we get more negative than reality. And this is going to help you see the reality that is not that negative. It's actually quite positive. You're going to start to equate speaking up with something good because you're starting to look at the data points. That's the second part. So mindset, write down your goals. What were your goals for the conversation? What were the fears that went through your mind, best and worst case scenario? And what are the emotions before, during, and after? And then the third part of the 5-minute speak up debrief ritual are the learnings. This is about, number one, the trigger. What was the exact moment, the exact trigger that convinced you, that motivated you? What was the thing that happened that actually got you to speak up, despite those fears, despite those concerns? What trigger made you actually go to that person and start sharing what you needed to share? Where did that courage come from? What was the hot button that finally made it worth for you to speak your mind unapologetically? That's going to give you awareness as to where your courage comes from so that you can tap into more of that courage when you need it. The second thing that you need to think about in terms of the learnings is what you nailed. What did you do well? What worked well? The more you study the art of speaking up, the better you'll be at analyzing what you did well and where there's opportunity for improvement. What made you proud of yourself in that moment? What worked well? What was planned that worked well? What was unplanned that worked well? And then finally, the opportunity for improvement. What could have gone differently? What could you have said differently? How could you have said it differently? Maybe should you have talked to somebody else? Where was the opportunity there? How can you improve on it? How can you improve that conversation going forward? Is there anything that you can do right now as a follow-up to that conversation to move towards that goal that you had? Maybe you didn't accomplish that goal. Is there any follow-up conversation that you can have? That is the opportunity, my friend. That's going to tell you what your next steps are. It's going to tell you how you can improve going forward. And it's going to create so much clarity in your mind. This is a simple, practical, easy framework and ritual that's going to help you build your confidence, build your courage, and grow your skill in speaking up, just because you're going to make the time to reflect on it. You don't have to do this forever. Put a goal in, do it for 1 week, then do it for a month. And I'm telling you, things are going to change for you dramatically. And if you can share these learnings with someone, if you can find an accountability buddy, a cheerleading buddy that you can meet with every single week to share your reflections on your speaking up moments and your reflections on this ritual, that will be incredibly powerful. So set up the 5-minute speak up debrief ritual for yourself and start tracking the situation, the date, the person you talked to, and the response they had, the mindset, the purpose for the conversation, the fears that you had beforehand, and the emotions before, during, and after. And what you learned, the triggers that actually made you finally speak up, what you did well, and the opportunities for improvement, and what you can do next as a follow-up. That's it. Super simple. Doesn't have to be complicated to get results. Start logging those in. Start this weekend. You don't have to wait. Start now. That way, you're really going to change your mindset, and you're going to build the courage and the confidence to speak your mind unapologetically. If you want to get tips on the go in your inbox, go to assertiveway.com/newsletter. I summarize the tips from the podcast only for my newsletter people. So come and be part of the community. You'll get those as well. It's free of charge. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I will see you the next time. Bye for now.